All right, well, as a Steelers fan, I'm very disgusted right now. And that's not to say I have anything against Bengals fans or anything like that, but I was not rooting for the Bengals to win this game. I know there are a lot of people who don't want to take the Goliath of the situation, which I guess you would say would be the Kansas City Chiefs, considering their previous playoff success, but I was absolutely rooting for the Chiefs. And they look like they're going to have this game in the bag going into halftime. And Mahomes played a great first half for the first 29 minutes, and then he botches that play right before halftime when instead of ending up getting 3 points or maybe even 7 points from like the 1 yard line, he throws the ball short behind the line of scrimmage and they end up running the clock out. He thinks he has a timeout. They have no timeouts, and he screws it up from there, and the rest of the game, he was pretty much awful. They do end up getting a much-needed field goal in the fourth quarter that kind of saves their lives, forces overtime. But really, Mahomes in that offense, I mean, Tyreek Hill, I don't think Tyreek Hill had a catch the entire second half or overtime. So he was not involved in that offense, and it wasn't really necessarily his fault. Mahomes made some awful plays, including taking some awful sacks where he was trying to extend plays instead of throw the ball away. Took sacks, including right before it's kicking the field goal to force overtime. He ends up costing his kicker like 15 yards of field positioning by running backwards and taking the sack. Joe Burrow, I thought Joe Burrow in the first half, like the offense just looked not very energetic. In the second half, they did a good job getting Jamar Chase involved a lot more. He was not taking over the game, though. He certainly drew a lot of double coverages and a lot of help from the defense. Ended up with 6 receptions for 54 yards and a touchdown. And T. Higgins, 6 receptions, 103 yards on 10 targets. He was the one who really took advantage of Jamar Chase drawing all the extra coverage. Because you could see he got open more often. He was hard to bring down, too. Like, he was breaking tackles and carrying guys for extra yards. And speaking of carrying guys for extra yards, Joe Mixon did a fantastic job. For the most part, there were a couple, I'll say it again, I really don't like the way the Bengals coaching staff, for the most part, coaches. I've said that before. I don't think Zach Taylor is a really good head coach. I mean, he has a chance to win Coach of the Year. I'm not a huge fan of how they coach. I'm not a fan at all of their offensive strategy, for the most part. Running the ball in first down is usually a terrible way to go. It's horribly inefficient, and it usually sets your offense back. But at the same time, Joe Mixon has some really good runs today, not necessarily on first down. There were a lot of actually really bad first down play calls when they ran the ball, but for the most part, Joe Mixon, I thought, played a really good game as well. And, of course, Joe Burrow ends up getting sacked, I think, just one time this whole game. Mahomes gets sacked 4 times. A lot of those were his fault for holding the ball too long and trying to create things that just were not there. Yeah, I mean, it's a tale of, there's 2 things I want to mention here. The Kansas City Chiefs played a role in beating themselves here. I have to fully say that. They did play a role in beating themselves. That being said, I really don't want to take away from the Bengals in this game because they definitely turned things around in the second half. To be able to shut out a team, well, to be able to shut out Tyreek Hill in the second half and overtime is a huge accomplishment. To be able to maintain Travis Kelce and kind of keep him boxed in, held him under 100 yards for the day. To not allow the Chiefs to really have any running game in the second half. Those are all big things that came out in the coaching staff, or maybe their mentality. I don't know if it's coaching staff or the players. They kind of adjusted what they were doing in the second half to be able to contain the Chiefs offensively. And Joe Burrow, to his credit, made plays when they needed them. T. Higgins showed up. Jamar Chase showed up on a couple of big plays. Samaje Perine had that great reception on the backfield. He took for 41 yards and a touchdown. So there were definitely some big plays going on here. Trey Hendrickson had a lot of hustle plays where he really was pressuring Mahomes. Ended up with a sack and a half on the day. Sam Hubbard had 2 sacks, including the one at the very end of the game where he forced the fumble and the Bengals almost won outright in regulation. Von Bell had an interception in the overtime. I think it was Jesse Bates, was it? Who came in and made a play on the ball. Allowed Von Bell to intercept the pass. I think that's who it was. But overall, a really good second half for the Bengals. A disastrous second half for the Chiefs. If you had told me that Patrick Mahomes would end up having a quote-unquote bad game at halftime or going into halftime, I would have laughed because he had 3 touchdowns at the half. And he had 3 touchdowns and 3 incompletions at the half. And he ends up going 26 for 39 with 2 interceptions and 275 yards. So, I don't know. Mahomes definitely had a bad game. Definitely a horrendous second half. Bad game overall, despite the 3 touchdowns. And, yeah, one thing I will mention is the overtime rules. They're not unfair. The overtime rules are not unfair. People will get obsessed with this 11-game sample size. They're like, in the playoffs, the team that wins the coin toss scores first 7 out of the 11 instances in overtime in the playoffs. Well, now they score first 7 out of 12 times, which is like 58%. All right, so it's marginally above average. It's a marginal advantage. But if you count the hundreds of games in the regular season in which we've seen this, it's like 55% the team that wins the coin toss wins the game. It's not a significant advantage. It really isn't. So the overtime rules are fine for the most part. I wouldn't be opposed to changing them. I really don't care either way. But the overtime rules are not bad. They're not screwy. They're not like a huge disadvantage for the team that loses the coin toss. They aren't. So you can stop complaining. Most of you just got emotional because you wanted to see Josh Allen play one more drive, which would have been cool. I'm not saying it wouldn't have been, but yeah. So I think the overtime rules, this whole debate about the overtime thing, can kind of go away now that the Bengals got the ball second in overtime and they end up winning this game. So I think that debate can get put behind us. We can start looking forward to the Super Bowl for the Bengals, the first Super Bowl they've been involved in since Joe Montana was playing. So it's been a while. It's interesting and it's kind of fun to have a new team involved in the Super Bowl because we got so used to seeing Tom Brady in whatever jersey he was wearing at the time, Tom Brady, and then Kansas City on this side for the AFC. So it's fun to have a new team involved. As a Steelers fan, I don't feel very good about it. I'm not very happy, but it was a good game though. I'm glad we had a good game today, and hopefully the next game is just as good, and hopefully the Super Bowl is a good game. So I would love to see the Bengals versus the Rams, the two high-powered offenses with a lot of really good talent. Hopefully that's the matchup we get when it comes down to it.